They weren't just our parents, they were our best friends.
It's like when the boys were little, they were like, I don't know, 4 and 6 before our daughter was born. And I said, we really need to teach them how to make a bed. And our oldest son, Jake, goes, but Daddy, you don't make your bed. And Rob went, he's right. All right, that's it. We don't have to. Yeah, so that was.
After finding love in his then girlfriend turned wife, Michelle Singer.
I changed the ending. So that they get back together. They get together.
Reiner, once reflecting on his life, sharing how he hoped to be remembered.
I hope I didn't take up space.
That's the discipline history of this household.
Right.
And even the kids complain that there aren't enough boundaries and that they weren't disciplined enough.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
In a 2022 episode of the All of Us podcast, Romy Reiner admitted that at one point she had been smoking up to 25 joints of marijuana a day, and she was on antidepressants. I was pretty addicted, she said. I hate marijuana. Addiction is very real. Let's say I was abusing it for sure. That is according to the Daily Mail. 15 to 25 joints a day, just blitzed all the time. That is a very long time. Dude, I was really fucked up. And now I smoke, let's say, tops 3 joints a day at the end of the night. Indeed, again, according to the Daily Mail, a resurfaced YouTube skit from 2016, that's 6 years earlier, 6 years before this podcast came out. It was posted by Nick during a period when he was trying his hand at comedy. Features a brief appearance from Romy, who happily smokes alongside her brother in what looks to be their parents' backyard.
And that's something that I got from my parents. My parents didn't discipline me either. But maybe, I didn't act out or whatever. I don't know what it was, but I never got disciplined.
Really?
No.
And so you just don't understand why it's needed.
No, you ignore him and says to my dad, this kid is really funny. My dad said, what, that kid? That kid, he's a sullen. He sits quiet. He doesn't, he's not funny. He didn't think I was it anyway. No, you got your kids. You love your kids. And, hopefully they do the right thing.
My dad said it. I'm no good. He doesn't know you.
Reiner told us this painful scene in his 1986 movie Stand By Me was autobiographical.
He hates me so good.
That's a scene I wrote in a hotel room in Oregon. And I'm writing this scene. I'm crying.
I still need to tell you about Rob Reiner's mental health, that he suffered from depression. And guess what? So did Romy, Nick's sister. And perhaps we can deal with that story through Romy's telling of it.
I would say, certain issues with the kids. Mm-hmm. We have different ways of going about it. We're on the same page a lot of times, but a lot of times we have different approaches.
And Rob Reiner's approach arguably was to pamper his children, to coddle his children.
You don't sound like, did you like the movie, or is it, you didn't love the movie?
I feel like I didn't get to express how I truly felt in it.
Well, that was where I was How much creative control did you have?
1/3.
I think that's enough background for now. Are you guys ready for some analysis? Are you guys ready for the number 3 clue everyone missed? Well, it hasn't happened yet, but on January 7th, Nick Reiner has to enter a plea, and right now men expect that plea to be not guilty by reason of insanity. What do you think? Will it work? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Welcome to the hundreds of you who have subscribed. If you haven't hit the thanks button, please do, especially with it being Christmas. And let's get started. All right, have a look at this article from Fox News. Nick Reiner's defense attorney weighs insanity plea as murder case enters discovery phase. Legal expert explains defense strategy.
The defense has the unilateral ability to, like I said, declare a doubt, and they can say, my client isn't ready to do this yet. And at this stage, the court basically has to take them at their word.
Meanwhile, Variety have an interesting article out right now that basically hits this issue on the nose. Nick Reiner murder case, why insanity defenses are tough to win. And do you see the irony in what we're dealing with? We're dealing with a situation where the family seem to have been not tough on Nick Reiner. And in this courtroom situation, it seems like the same thing. We don't want to be too tough on Nick Reiner, is not guilty by reason of insanity. Isn't that ironic? In this analysis, I want to look at A, 3 intertextual cases where high-profile suspects you've probably heard of tried to rely on the insanity defense, and they failed, and they were convicted. And then, shocker, we're going to look at B, an incident where Nick apparently faked being crazy to get his way. And finally, we'll deal with C, the number 3 clue, which I think not only rubbishes his chances of a NGRI plea, not guilty by reason of insanity, but very likely shows potential guilty knowledge. And we'll deal with that at the end. Let's start with A, intertextual cases involving NGRI. One more time, not guilty by reason of insanity. Now, you may remember Fruitcake Letitia Stork attempted the NGRI defense. There seemed to be a lot of play acting in court, but in the end, jurors convicted Stork of all the charges she faced regardless. Even before the trial, I actually wrote a book on the Stork case, Boy Interrupted, and my impression of Letitia was that she was literally trying every possible trick to weasel out of paying the piper for her crimes, and the not guilty by reason of insanity was just one of those ploys. She also tried to escape while being transferred from, was it Florida or North Carolina, on her way back to Colorado. Then there's also Laurie Vallow. She, on the other hand, didn't have the NGRI option available to her because Idaho law abolished the insanity defense. You may remember, though, that the cuckoo Laurie was initially found incompetent to stand trial, but then after her conviction, she basically declared herself more than competent by electing to represent herself in a follow-up trial for attempted murder, which, given she wasn't a trained lawyer, she did okay at. But what this illustrates is perpetrators and sometimes lawyers sometimes try to use incompetency simply as a legal loophole. A third example where competency factored into the legalities was Brian Koberger. In that case, his lawyer wanted the fact that he was autistic to be seen as a mitigating factor. And that brings us to B. Nick has faked being crazy before. Put up your hand if you know any drug addicts. Drug addicts are master manipulators and natural liars. Lying is a way of life for them because they are constantly hiding the fact of what they are doing with their lives, the fact of their addictions, the fact of their true intentions, the fact of their true motives. According to page 6, Nick Reiner has attempted to claim crazy before. The troubled son of Robin Michelle previously admitted that he once concocted a plan to make himself appear. Have you got this? He concocted a plan to make himself appear mentally unstable. So why wouldn't he try and do that now? And why did he do that? In order to score medication at a rehab facility. Nick told the Dopey podcast that's presumably the doctors, refused to give me meds because they were like, you don't need any meds, and I was freaking out. That already speaks volumes that previously Nick wanted meds where his handlers felt he was fine, basically normal. Nick then set out to prove he was crazy. Well, aren't we going through something like that again? According to Nick, the medical staff at Alena Lodge in New Jersey thought that his insistence on needing meds was an act, calling his claims fake. Well, weren't they? I was like, how do I show these mother effers that I'm crazy? He recalled thinking. So I was like, I'll throw a rock through a window. By the way, this isn't what someone is claiming Nick did. This is what Nick is admitting he did on a podcast. The 32-year-old decided to target a meeting room of sorts that had big glass windows. He admitted that he hated how special the room was to the staff. You see a sign here again of a spiteful side to Nick, that when he wants something, well, basically you can see how difficult it is to say no to him. You say no and then he trashes the place, so you sort of have no choice. So I took a rock through the window and some people saw me and she ratted on me and then they put me on Wellbutrin, he says with a laugh. And I think that's what he wanted. He wanted to be put on Wellbutrin. And Wellbutrin is a prescription antidepressant medication. Statements like this could well come back to haunt Nick because they are sure to land with a jury. And that brings us to the number 3 clue we all missed, and that is C, the murder weapon. Do you know the murder weapon has not been found, and that is potentially a problem for Nick? Why? Because if Nick disposed of it, if he hid it away, that potentially shows guilty knowledge that he had done something wrong, and he's trying to hide that away. You can't have guilty knowledge, you can't know right from wrong and hope to rely on the NGRI defense. Why? Because they're mutually exclusive. Some other cases where the murder weapon was never found, Brian Koberger. There's also the 2 firearms that were used in the murder of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh, never found. And there's some uncertainty in the Amanda Knox case where a knife found at Knox's boyfriend's home was the murder weapon or not. But it's not just the missing knife, it's also the type of knife and where it comes from. Did it come from the kitchen? If Nick had to go and find a knife and go from that room to the bedroom, all of that is showing someone who isn't acting randomly, spontaneously, impulsively, or chaotically. There is premeditation and deliberation. And besides the missing knife, investigators are going to want to look at Nick's phone. Was it turned off at the time of the murders? Was it placed on airplane mode at the time of the murders? Were any messages deleted? Because these are also potential indications of guilty knowledge. So what do you think? If you were representing Nick Reiner, would you rely on the NGRI defense?
So I'm still in that not believing it stage. I know it happened, but I'm driving around and all of a sudden I actually 2 days ago I called his number.
Well, I'm not going to take it further than that, but let me ask you a question. Do you think tough love was the answer here? According to the Daily Mail, tough love is always the biggest challenge for a parent or sibling, but it was desperately needed here. Do you agree with that? Well, if Nick does end up going to prison, maybe he'll finally experience the tough love required to kick the habit that ruined his and his family's lives. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you have a good Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you're having a good end of the year celebration, whatever you're doing. Meanwhile, thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.